Hello, I'm H&V News Deputy Editor Neil Merritt, and welcome to the latest edition of our Future of HVAC Podcast. I'm joined once again by Dr. Matthew Truella, Managing Director of Kensa Contracting, and in this second part of the discussion we look at the major industry changes that may be needed to make smart heating a viable mainstream proposition. From the perspective of technology and innovation, particularly for expanding the appeal of ground-sourced heat pumps, Dr. Truella believed the convergence of these systems with smart metering technology could prove to be the most significant lift for industry.
Smart metering has seen the advent of electricity tariffs that are the price is based on the time that you use the energy. So Octopus are the first ones to really launch a truly half-hourly time of use tariff called the Agile tariff. And at 4 p.m. every afternoon, they publish your electricity prices from midnight to midnight the following day in half-hourly slots. That's a great thing. You can plan your energy use, but if you're talking about something like heating from a ground source heat pump, that's really powerful. Because if we have that knowledge of the building and what it's likely to need, knowledge of how much energy the occupants are likely to need and how warm they'll want to be and when, if you take that knowledge and fold it in with the price of electricity over the next 24 hours, you can come up with an optimised heating plan each day that matches the needs and the comfort of the occupants, but also make sure that you deliver energy at a lower price. With a ground source heat pump, that's very, very straightforward to do, because quite often, and should be fairly obvious, but quite often the lowest price is at night, and at night the ground is still exactly the same temperature it is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It really doesn't care. It takes many months to change the temperature of the ground. So running a ground source heat pump overnight when electricity is cheap, storing that energy and delivering it when electricity is expensive can save people quite a lot of money. Our initial modelling shows even just using the heat stored in the walls of the building, so between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m, turning off for 2 half-hour spells, you barely notice the temperature drop. But just doing that and running the heat pump a little bit harder just before that and just after those times, then you can save people 25% on their bills. And if you start to shift it to overnight and store it in the property for later use, it's very easy to see how you can halve people's bills. So we think that's a huge, huge bonus going forward. The lovely coincidence is when you do that to save people money, you also save carbon, because overnight is also the same time is lowest carbon. So that's where wind and nuclear and some of the background generation technologies are running at their best. And so electricity is cheap and low carbon at that time. Also, quite often during that time, we've got too much energy. We're generating more than we need. And you find things like wind turbines being asked to turn off because we're generating more energy than we need. And that's sometimes a criticism of wind turbine, actually, but I think it's great that they're able to offer that flexibility. Actually, it's their strength that's kind of been thrown back at them a little bit as a weakness, which is odd. But in our world, instead of paying them to turn off, what we'll actually do is say we're generating too much energy here, let's run a couple of 100,000 or a couple of million heat pumps, store the energy, and then deliver that heat when it's needed when the grid's under pressure. So by shifting load around, you help balance the grid, reduce the carbon, and reduce the cost to the consumer, all in the same algorithm. It remains to be seen quite how we design our software to do that, because you could choose to optimise on one of those three things. At least whichever one you choose to optimise on, the other two are benefit. We're running a trial with an Innovate UK project in Oxford at the minute, and we're going to trial this in 300 homes, and we've chosen to optimise on the cost to the consumer and take any carbon and grid balancing benefits as bonuses, which we will get, but that's our choice. There are other projects around that are working on grid balancing and taking consumer costing as a bonus and carbon saving as a bonus, but that's an emerging market that's quite exciting, I think, and has the potential to really revolutionise how we think about the heat pump world.
What would that trial be? Is that sort of imminent trial? Is that already going on?
Yeah, the software is being written as we speak, and the work on site is scheduled to start in April, and the first data being recorded next winter.
Oh, wow.
So winter from September 20 onwards.
A critical report from the National Audit Office has warned about a failure to properly ensure that smart meters remain compatible with different tariffs and technologies, and that end users are aware of how the devices should be implemented. Considering this ongoing awareness challenge, Dr. Truella said that realising the potential of combining heat pumps with smart metering would require manufacturers and suppliers such as itself to provide more of a full heating service. This might require software support alongside more traditional maintenance. Does this mean then that heating system manufacturers may need to take a very different role with regard to customer support?
I think it does. I think all heat pump manufacturers will need to get closer and closer to how their products are used. At Kensa, you may or may not know, we have a contracting division, and we get very, very intimate with all of the projects and a quite detailed project management from start to finish. That's only going further, so we're then being involved after the fact with the controls and the software. That's a definite trend. The smart meters, you're right, we've had smart meters in people's properties not behaving in a smart way. So the assumption was if you put a smart meter in and then you have a link to a display in the home, then people will just automatically use less energy because they'll be shocked into it. I'm sure that's happened. I'm sure some people spend their lives staring at the remote display of their smart meter and running around the house turning things off, and that is a benefit. But our view is for things to be truly smart, they need to take information around them and start making decisions. So that's our view of a smart heating control. It's not necessarily one that's just internet connected and maybe you could do on your phone and reprogram. It's actually one that's going to take in how much your electricity is going to cost, what the carbon content of it is, what the weather forecast is, what temperature you like being typically at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then make some decisions for you so that you're always at the right temperature in the cheapest, lowest carbon way possible. That to us is a genuinely smart system, and hopefully should get the benefit out of smart meters that we really haven't seen to date.
And I guess that adds then to that consumer buying then, when you've got the use studies, then you've got friends and acquaintances saying, I've been hooked up to that it's there.
It does.
During the keynote speech at our Future of HVAC Summit, Mike Childs of Friends of the Earth said that current take-up of heat pumps in the UK remained pitiful, despite the likely potential alongside revised gas boilers to help realise decarbonised heating. Dr. Truella accepted in our last podcast that this assessment was probably a fair description of the present UK market. I asked him then what were the key differentials between a more mature heat pump market such as Germany to that of the UK.
It's definitely true that the penetration of heat pumps into the UK is way lower than Germany, Sweden, for example. The main reason for that is we have had access to cheap gas, and we've had a grid that can send it round. That actually is a continuing barrier, actually, because even over the last 5 years, the price of electricity has grown faster than the price of gas. It actually is discouraging people towards decarbonising heating at the minute, because heat pumps now have to perform even better to save you money against gas than they did 5 years ago.
Oh,
so gas prices have gone up, but electricity prices have gone up even faster. There's another role of government to play in this. Most of the levies that fund a lot of the green initiatives, like the feed-in tariff and even the RHI to a certain extent, have been put onto the electricity bills. So even things like the eco-subsidy, it's down to the electricity providers to give grants and to pay for work that saved carbon and bills savings. That's gone on to electricity bills. But none of that burden has gone on to the gas bills as yet. So I think that was a fair decision, hand on heart, despite being a huge advocate for electrification of heat. If you go back 8-9 years ago, maybe 2011, 2010, the carbon intensity of electricity was more than double that of gas, and I think at that point it would have been a difficult argument to win to tax gas equally to electricity given the difference in carbon. right now, the success of renewables going onto our electricity grid have been so fast and so impressive that even just running a direct electric boiler now is lower carbon than gas. And when you get the efficiencies of a heat pump, it's many times lower. So the argument in favour of piling the subsidies onto and the levies onto the electricity bill are actually a little bit outdated now, and no one's going to like it that much, but the gas prices are going to have to bear some of that cost.
It's changing markets, I guess, at this time.
And if we're actually only advocating a level playing field. I think you could argue it the other way around now that electricity and particularly heat pumps are lower carbon than gas. You could argue the subsidy is more onto gas than it is onto heat pumps. But even just a level playing field would be a great policy move.
That was Dr. Matthew Truella there of Kensa Contracting. We'd like to thank him for his time, and indeed you for listening. We hope you'll join us soon for another H&V News podcast. Goodbye.